There's snacks back there if you guys want. The bathrooms are down the hallway to the right. My name is Jennifer Ruggles, and I represent District 5 of Puna, and that is Lower Puna, Upper Puna and Kalapana. I'm kind of sad to see, or disappointed that there's no more video going on here.
I live streaming.
Oh, awesome. Thank you.
You're welcome. No worries.
Okay, so I'm here to share with you what I'm doing to continue advocating on behalf of protected persons. And protected persons, just for the record, also include Americans. So we're talking about all of Hawaii Islands. First, before I start, how many of you saw my last presentation, either in video or in person? Awesome. Awesome. This is going to build upon that. And so if there's some things that we move over too quickly, feel free to ask at the end, or you can watch the video. David Corrigan did an excellent job videoing it on Big Island Video News. It's about 40 minutes total, and then an hour and a half of questions and answering. So in my last presentation, I talked about how President Grover Cleveland, maybe we can shut the lights off. Can we try to play with those lights?
Oh yeah.
Is that good?
Yeah, you
Is the video
good?
good?
Yeah, you're good.
We gotcha.
All right, awesome. So I talked about how President Grover Cleveland announced that the military demonstration, when the U.S. Marines landed on January 17th, 1893, he said that it was an act of war committed by the United States against the Hawaiian Kingdom. And so since then, we've been in a state of war. And I explained how Hawaii is occupied according to international law. I explained, sorry, this microphone situation is awkward. I explained how Hawaii is occupied by the United States according to international law. I explained how annexation can only be the outcome of a treaty, and that treaty can only happen via cession. So the only form in which an annexation can happen is by cession, and the only way cession can happen is by treaty, a treaty of peace. And there exists no treaty between the Hawaiian Kingdom and the United States that transfers the sovereignty of the Hawaiian Kingdom to the United States. I also explained how a country or a state can continue to exist despite its government being overthrown. I showed you the United Nations Human Rights Memorandum that was sent to Hawaii state judges, of which we have plenty of copies back there for you. And this, Dr. Alfred Desires, the U.S. sat on this council when he was elected. He is an American, and he's a Harvard graduate, he's an attorney, and he's one of the world-renowned experts in international law and human rights. And the United States did not dispute his appointment. And this is what he said. He said, the Hawaiian Islands is that of a sovereign nation state in continuity, but a nation state that is under a strange form of occupation from the United States resulting from an illegal military occupation and fraudulent annexation. And last time I talked about how the annexation was fraudulent. And he says a sovereign nation state in continuity, that means a country that continues to exist. Just as Canada exists and the United States exists, the Hawaiian Kingdom exists with the same rights and responsibilities. He says, as such, the international laws, the Hague and Geneva Conventions require that governance and legal matters within the occupied territory of the Hawaiian Islands must be administered by the applications of the laws of the occupied state, in this case the Hawaiian Kingdom, not the laws of the occupier, the United States. I also showed this, this is from the case repository from the International Permanent Court of Arbitration, where they accepted this case in 2000 called Larson versus Hawaiian Kingdom. And at first, That's the bottom part zoomed in. At first, they thought that they couldn't accept it because they thought it was a domestic dispute with the U.S. courts because Hawaii is supposed to be part of the United States. And they wouldn't have jurisdiction over this if it wasn't an international matter having to do with an independent country. After exchanging information with the parties, they accepted the case. As you can see, the Hawaiian Kingdom as a state, which in international terms means country. The one thing I didn't show was this article by the National Education Association. How many of you have seen this? Okay, good. There's news for some of you guys. This was published in April of this year. And the HSTA is Hawaii's affiliate chapter. This is America's largest union with over 3 million members. And they published this in April. It's called the Illegal Overthrow of the Hawaiian Government. This is what they say. Despite the unprecedented prolonged nature of the illegal occupation of the Hawaiian Kingdom by the United States, the Hawaiian state, as a subject of international law, is afforded all the protections that international law provides. It talks about belligerent occupation and how that does not affect the continuity of the state, even where there exists no government. So this is exactly what Dr. Desai said and exactly what the Permanent Court of Arbitration said. And this was published in the NEA's magazine and on their website.
NEA is the National Education Association. Your teachers, your custodians, your bus drivers.
Yeah. It says, without a treaty of peace, the laws of war and neutrality continue to apply. So let's look at what those laws are. And those laws would be the Hague and Geneva Conventions, which are treaties ratified by the United States and actually codified in the federal code. This is Title 18 of United States Code. So this is federal law. This applies to all of the United States. And any violation of this is a felony. And it defines war crimes, Section 2441, as any breach to these international conventions signed at Geneva. These are also mentioned in the Constitution. In Article 6, it says, all treaties made shall be the supreme law of the land. And this is also where my oath comes from. This is what has brought me to do what I'm doing today. The senators and representatives before mentioned, members of the various state legislatures, shall be bound by oath to support this Constitution. So it says treaties are the supreme law of the land. And those include the Hague and Geneva Conventions. So let's see what they say, the Hague and Geneva Conventions. Article 29, the party to the conflicts in which these hands protected persons may be is responsible for the treatment accorded to them by its agents. The term agent must be understood as embracing everyone who is in the service of a contracting party. They say a contracting party because these are contracts, essentially, these are treaties. And the United States is a contracting party because it signed this convention. It included civil servants, and that's me. So I am bound by my oath to uphold these treaties. They say that I have to take the greatest pains to ensure that state services in contact with protected persons are in actual fact capable of applying the provisions to the convention. It also says that I must ensure respect for the convention in all circumstances. So this is what I'm doing, and this is what I'm here to explain to you. What I'm doing to ensure respect for the conventions and protect the rights of protected persons. So the last town hall, I talked about how I was putting every agent of the United States concerning protected persons on notice. I talked about the letter that I sent to Queens Hospital. And I'm about to explain to you the one that I sent to 32 of Hawaii Circuit Court judges. These were sent to all Hawaii Circuit Court judges. But before that, let me show you something. Queens Hospital got back to me. This is what they say. They say, I received your letter today. I forwarded your letter to our staff for review. The issues you are raising are quite complex. After our review, we will be following up with you. They haven't followed up yet, but I will keep you posted. Back Okay, back to the state judges. Let's look again at the human rights memo. So this was actually sent to the Hawaii state judges from Dr. Alfred Desires himself in February. That's what that date is. And my attorney confirmed that they did receive it. So I'm following up. Again, so this is what he says. This is from Dr. Desires' letter. He points out that historical and ongoing plundering of the Hawaiian lands, particularly of those heirs and descendants land titles that originate from the distributions of lands under the authority of the Hawaiian Kingdom. The U.S. courts have to take international law into account in property disputes. The state of Hawaii courts should not lend themselves to a flagrant violation of the rights of the land of title holders. Therefore, the courts of state of Hawaii must not enable or collude in the wrongful taking of private lands. So what does this mean for private persons? So I sent them this letter. Here's the letterhead. The list goes on and on with all the judges. Regarding war crimes committed against protected persons by Hawaii state courts. So I explained how protected persons include nationals. So first I explained how it appears Hawaii is in a continual state of war because there's evidence, clear evidence, that the Hawaiian Kingdom continues to exist. I explained I also explained how protected persons don't only include Hawaiian Kingdom nationals or foreigners, but since 1999 it now includes Americans. I explained my oath of office and my recent question to Corporation Counsel and how I came out as a whistleblower and how my oath obligates me to put them on notice. And so what this all comes down to is I'm showing them how proceeding with foreclosures in Hawaii violates the rights of protected persons. So how does it do that? I'm about to show you. Okay, so remember what the UN memo said, that the laws of the Hawaiian Kingdom need to be being administered, not the laws of the United States. So this is what the laws of the Hawaiian Kingdom say. To entitle any conveyance or other instrument to be recorded, it shall be acknowledged by the party or parties executing the same before the registrar of conveyances or his agent or some judge of a court of record or notary. And that's important, so that's going to come up in a minute. They also say that no certificate of acknowledgement contrary to the provisions of this act shall be held valid in any court of this kingdom. And so I forgot to explain one thing. So what they mean by conveyance or instrument are real property titles and financial instruments. And those would include promissory notes and loans and the such like that. So what does this mean? It means that since January 17, 1893, since the government was taken over, the execution of deeds and conveyances of real estate and mortgages cannot be considered lawfully executed because the government, the people that authorized these conveyances were not officials of the Hawaiian Kingdom. Like the Hague Geneva Conventions say, laws must be administered, the Hawaiian Kingdom laws must be administered, not the laws of the United States. So what's happening is the United States is administering their own real estate laws in another country of the Hawaiian Kingdom. Okay, so that's a big one. So what this means for you, potentially, is that if you have a mortgage, title insurance should cover it, making the foreclosure unnecessary. So how does this work? So a mortgage is a lien on a property. It's what you sign over as collateral to the bank. So in case you don't pay, the bank gets to keep your property and they make sure that their debt gets paid back. So say you're the borrower and you want to get a loan. You put your property up as collateral. So the lender gives you the promissory note, which is the loan contract, and the borrower gives the lender a mortgage, and they use their land title as collateral, but in order to get the mortgage, they have to buy title insurance. It's required in the escrow process. So they actually, so the title insurance, there's 2 policies issued 90% of the time in the escrow process. Nelson, did we hand out those papers? Okay, sorry, we're going to put on pause for a second. I want you guys to be able to follow this.
What does it look like, Jen?
On page 2. So this is the settlement statement. This is what you get in your closing costs when you get out of escrow. It's from the escrow company. So go to page 2 and look for lines 1110 and 1109. It's on the back of the first page. and 11:9 on the back of the first page. So 1110 has the amount for the owner's coverage. The title insurance, you actually get 2 policies. You get the owner's policy and the lender's policy. The owner's policy would be your policy. That's the borrower's policy. And it covers the full amount of the loan. It's fixed. So if they ever find something wrong with the title, they're supposed to cover the full cost. And for the lender's policy, you'll see it's a little bit less. That's an 1109. That's because it decreases with the amount of payments that you make and how much you owe the bank. So if you had a $100,000 loan, you paid off $50,000, and then they made a claim for title insurance, it would cover the rest of the $50,000. So that's why it's less on that page. And so if you have that, if you have these papers, which is issued to you at escrow, you can see what type of coverage you have. Does that make sense?
Yes.
So let's bring this back around. How does it relate to foreclosures? Well, there are certain risks covered by title insurance. If it's fraudulent, or if the title of the property was not properly notarized, which is what the Hawaiian Kingdom law said it needed to be, or if there's a defective judicial administrative proceeding. This is from the American Land Title Association, and this is standard with each title insurance. So I point this out in the letter. I'm trying to show them that foreclosing is unnecessary. So I say the aforementioned coverages apply to all land titles in the Hawaiian Islands due to the failure to administer Hawaiian Kingdom law in accordance with the Hague and Geneva Conventions. As covered risks, the lenders are protected regarding the debts owed to them, and the borrowers are protected if they purchase a title insurance policy. So again, you can see if you have that title insurance policy. I put this into the letter, what Dr. Desire said about the ongoing plundering in Hawaiian Islands, which I already read to you. And I wrap it up and say, as an agent for the United States, I am bound to ensure respect for the Convention in all circumstances, and therefore call upon you to cease and desist in the wrongful taking of private lands of protected persons that are under foreclosure, because it's unnecessary.
Woo!
So next, okay, how many of you have heard of misprisonment of a felony?
What's the first word?
Misprison of a felony. Okay. I think I lost my last piece of my presentation. Oh, well, okay. Well, misprison of a felony. Misprison of a felony. Misprison, yeah. Yeah, it sounds awkward. But Well, we're going to get to that in a second. So remember I said that war crimes are codified, they're felony. Any violation of the Hague and Geneva Conventions would constitute a felony under U.S. law, Title 18, Section 2441. This is misprision of a felony. It says, whoever having knowledge of there being a felony being committed must report it, or else they will be fined or imprisoned for up to 3 years. So I'll repeat that. Anyone that has knowledge of a felony must report it, otherwise they can be fined or imprisoned. War crimes are felonies. Do you see where I'm going? So this was sent today. There's copies in the back that are hot off the press. I sent this to the FBI this morning.
Chee-hoo!
And I also CC'd the International Criminal Court, Amnesty International, the International Committee of the Red Cross, and the Human Rights Watch. I say, as an elected official, I have a special duty and obligation to report crimes, especially severe crimes, such as war crimes. And crimes of genocide. Therefore, I am reporting the commission of war crimes and the international crime of genocide to the FBI's field office in Keaau Bay, the island of Oahu, pursuant to Title 18, Section 4, misprision of felony. So I am obligated to report these crimes.
Excellent. And you did.
I did.
And you rock.
This morning. And this is just the beginning.
Yeah.
There's a lot of war crimes going on, unfortunately.
All four blessings.
So that's my presentation. And you can stay posted at jenruggles.com on latest updates. If you guys have any questions about what this means as far as if you have a mortgage or a foreclosure, we can get into that. Maybe we can turn the lights back on if somebody doesn't mind.
I have a question. Since the FBI is actually an American agency, does it do any good to report to them?
Yes, because I am an agent in the United States and their own laws are being violated, then I'm obligated to report them, especially because of my position. And I took an oath to uphold the U.S. Constitution, and I'm actually an American by parentage.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Jeff.
What about the legality of the company?
I don't even know where to start with that, honestly. I know I'm not the first to report to the FBI. I believe, was it Dexter Kayama reported? Excuse me, yeah, Professor Williamson Chang also made a report. And I believe it had to do with OHA. Any other questions?
Has any of your colleagues or constituents joined you officially?
I've had constituents.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely, but
Have
none
they?
of my colleagues.
None of your colleagues?
No, they're not touching this.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's disappointing.
Very.
And I still haven't heard anything back from Mr. Kamelamana.
Nothing?
Who is court counsel, gave her an opinion, the opine last talk story.
Yeah, you guys saw what he gave us, the 2.5 sentences. Half of it wasn't even true. Go ahead.
Jen, thank you for all your great work. This has been very enlightening and uplifting. Thank you. Been working, trying with the prosecuting attorney's office, Mitch Law, for almost 1 year. Trying to get him to respond to what amounts to 5 or 6 hard copy claims and notice with a demand. Here is a Hawaiian Indian claim, and please respond to it. And finally, because I'm being dragged into court again, I had to go and I had to, with Aloha, tell his secretaries and his captain of human resources that I needed their name. And I love them. They're very nice to me, but I needed their name because by their silence, they are doing, like you described, a misprision of felony. Because their boss is in professional misconduct, like Kamela Mela was. Because I spoke to those ladies who were very nice, they knew.
Do you have a question?
Yeah, I do have a question. He called me back, Mitch, because I said, honor your oath. You're dragging me in court again. I already spent time without due process. He called me, and he said he's putting a response, unlike Kamela Mela, point for point. Well, he can't go point for point. But he's going to put a response as the lead prosecutor why the state of Hawaii is offering him blood. And I want to know if you would like to look at that letter because I'm coming to her and to our Lahui. Because I don't want to answer Mitch just as one kana. I want to answer Mitch because I love and trust and believe in you. For those of you that are lawful in your own country now, if it's one or if it's 1,000. But I'm surrendering this because we've done this all for the good of all. And I would like you to chime in on that because Mitch in his own way is standing in honor. I give him credit for that. I look forward to more Hall Corner, but I think you need to see this.
Yeah, I think I find it very interesting.
It's in the mail.
Right?
It's in the mail now. Okay, so share it with our Lahui.
Great. Thank you, Jim. Yeah. What prompted me to do this was, first off, I had attended this conference that I was invited to. It was called the Ho'i Ho'i Air. And it had all these it had all these scholars of international law and history presenting on the legal history and political history of the Hawaiian Islands. And I was struck by their presentations, and the one that I was most struck by was Dr. Keaau. And so I read one of his papers, and it actually took me months and months to get through it. It was really difficult. But I wanted to know the truth. And so I did my research, and in that process, I had received an email from the acting council of Regency of the Hawaiian Kingdom notifying me of all these different legal actions. One of them was a lawsuit against Trump. But the one that stood out the most was this one at the Permanent Court of Arbitration, the International Court of Arbitration that acknowledged the Hawaiian Kingdom as a nation state in continuity. And within that email, it also had the United Nations Human Rights Office of the High Commissioner's letter. Just those 2 pages back there, they're very dense, but they're very clear. It was sent to everyone. Everyone received this email. I'm the only one, I believe, that read it and took action. Yeah, after I made my announcement, a couple of council members took me aside. I'm not going to say their names, but they were like, "Jen, we get emails like this all the time. Don't worry about it." Like, did you read it?
First of all, wow, you are an amazing, amazing woman, and I am ashamed to call myself an American to see what has happened to the Hawaiian Kingdom. My question is what do you really want to see at the end of this? And what do you think, do you think that with this, I don't even know, do you call him a person? The current administration that just doesn't sign some jacked up executive order and just be done with that. Can that actually be done? Perhaps it might be a question more for the attorney. But could that actually be done and just washed away? Executive order, well, none of this means nothing now. We're just going to, wag the dog and, moves on to something else. Do you see something like that happening, honestly?
So your question is, what do I want to see done, and do I
Do you,
Do I-
do you think it will actually happen?
do I foresee the president signing an executive
Yeah,
order and
something
washing
to-
this away?
Yeah, something to impede it in some way.
First of all, the first thing I want to see happen is compliance. The second thing is about the I don't think that executive order can just delete the Constitution, because this is constitutional. And, yeah. I don't know what the executive powers are as far as redacting them being a contracting power to treaties, international treaties.
Can't do that. Only the Senate can do that. The president can take action, but he has to get approval of the Senate involving anything dealing with the treaty, internal or external.
Right, okay. I remember reading that somewhere. So he said that the president can't do anything with treaties without the approval of the Senate.
So there is hope. there's a lot of hope.
Okay, go ahead, Jamie.
Yeah, so, I understand when a state is admitted to the union, every state that is in the union at that time, their state legislature has to pass, admission to a new state. And collectively, the state, in this case 49 before Hawaii, would have to have a certain majority, 2/3, half, whatever the margin is, I can't remember. Would it be feasible to have constitutional lawyers, each one of those states, contact and try to get them to help you in your endeavor?
Okay, I understood would it be feasible to contact the senators of each state and what?
Lawyers, constitutional lawyers, to help address each state assembly to say that you were given misinformation to attempt Hawaii into the union some 100+ years ago, 60+, and this is the actual factual information, and by constitutional and international law, that now we're addressing each state assembly and agreeing is more than the federal government.
Okay, so I think your question is, would it be possible for attorneys from each state to go to each senator and educate them on the law? I don't see why not.
I have property in Black Sand subdivision. I bought the title insurance, Jen. I paid the title insurance. I'm on Kingdom ground. They got paid. Who owns the land? Kingdom owns the land, correct?
I would assume so. I'm not the expert though. She's asking if the property that she bought. Well, I guess that the answer to your question would be we have to look at when the last registration was with the Office of the Registrar from the Hawaiian Kingdom.
That's Kalapala.
Oh, go ahead, Tommy.
I put this card out, and we're going to be having an educational conference in Kalapara on the 24th. And this is where we first met Jen when she came to the lawful lawyer conference that we held up at the Boys Club. So this is going to be in Kalapana, and if you haven't gotten up one of these cards, we have all of the experts coming to this conference, and we will be able to answer all of your questions because we got the who's who of knowledgeable, experienced Hawaiian Kingdom constitutional experts, U.S. constitutional experts, and international law experts that will be here. Please, grab this card and come. It's free, and it's going to be all day from 8 o'clock to 5 in the afternoon.
So yeah, there's the flyers back there, and this is actually one of the things that got me really started on this was that event, which they hold annually. And yeah, they're gonna have scholars from all over the islands. These are the people that know this issue the best. So that's the best place to get your questions answered. But of course, you're welcome to keep asking.
So I wrote a few things that I wanted addressed because I am still learning this history. So with that being said, if this conference comes up, can you maybe just pass this to the experts that may want to address these at that conference? I would love to do the answer to that. So for such things as the Morgan report, the adaptation of Queen.
Hold on. Do you want me to pass this to the people at the conference to answer your questions?
Or the people here who would have answers. Whoever could answer these questions, I'm in the dark. Like I said last time, I've been here for like 5 months. I don't know a lot about it, but I'm getting conflicts of history, and it's such a hazy history, with a lot of missing information. For me, I'm still in the haze. I would like to get this cleared up. It's important to me. I don't want to, violate somebody's land or their trees.
I actually won't be able to make it to this conference, so it might be better if you went and asked yourself.
Right there, maybe people would pick it up.
Okay.
I have a few things just, in the haze that I want to clear up.
Okay.
Thank you so much.
So here's his questions. If any of you are interested in picking it up, then probably get an answer.
Yeah, I'm sorry, it's not an answer you can give. There's people here that could give the answer probably. So thank you for putting that out there.
Okay. You're welcome.
I just want to follow on with this gentleman's question. How do you see this unfolding? Where do you see it going?
Can you ask me where I see this going?
Yeah. How do you see this unfolding? Where do you see this going?
Well, let me, there is, hold on a second. So as far as my research has gone, that if the United States were to come into compliance, they would have to start administering Hawaiian Kingdom law through the president, through a military government. That's as far as I know. We do have Dr. Keaau sign here if you have any specific questions on what that would look like.
So you said again that the President of the United States would become the interim leader of the kingdom?
No, but the President of the United States would need to institute a military government and start administering Hawaiian Kingdom law.
Okay.
And in the process of restoring the Hawaiian Kingdom government.
That's how it was. Thank you.
Oh yeah.
Where a nation has turned back over territories, islands, and they gave them back their sovereignty.
I'm sorry, I didn't understand the question.
Stand up.
Is there precedent where this happens in other nations where they have to give back islands or territories like Hong Kong or Falkland Islands? Maybe what they have to go through, maybe America has to go through as well?
There's one instance that I know of, which is when Germany invaded Luxembourg. Is there anyone else that would like to answer that question? Because I'm going to be honest with you guys. I've only started this in the past few months. I'm not an expert by any means.
Well, you're doing a damn good
I'm just trying to stay focused on what my responsibilities are as an agent in the United States and someone in my position, so I'm not violating my oath. Go ahead, Keaau.
Yeah.
Here's somebody that gives some real questions about what the future will look like.
I have just one quick question for even just the both of you. Have you considered taking this to someone like Anderson Cooper or a media outlet to where it can do an amazing investigative reporting, something like what was just published on Follow the Money about Trump's,
Yeah. So his question is, have I considered putting this out to big media outlets? I can do
to like really
a real
get a team
story.
of investigative reporters behind you, like 14 months of this.
Yeah, I have sent out press releases, but what I realized I need to do is send out full press packets for them. And that's what we're going to be working on the next few weeks. But I want to also add to some of the work I've been doing. And that is I'm taking all of this evidence, all of these letters, and then the testimony of the protected persons, as well as an online petition that's been going around, to Amnesty International. I'm going to go to New York. I'm going to present all of this at Amnesty International, the Human Rights Watch, and International Committee of the Red Cross. And all of these nonprofits actually help make reports for the International Criminal Court. But what we want them to do is appoint a special rapporteur just to start documenting the human rights violations in Hawaii.
I'm just going to be real brief on answering the question about were there other cases like Hawaii. Yeah. Okay, so in 1893, there were 44 independent states. Today, there's 197. Okay, there's 193 members of the UN, but there were 44 independent states. In 1893, the Hawaiian Kingdom was one of them. Okay. Now, in 1945, when the United Nations was formed, you had 46 independent states that formed the United Nations, and through decolonization, where territories became decolonized, that's when they became additional members to the United Nations, such as Indonesia, Malaysia, East Timor. Okay. Now, a situation that resembles Hawaii would be the state of war that was between the United States and Japan, which started December 7, 1941. Okay, so that was an act of war committed by Japan against the U.S. military. Okay. Now that triggered a state of war, and war fighting ensued until 1945. 1945 is when they signed the Treaty of Surrender on the USS Missouri, which is in Pearl Harbor now. It was in Japan. Okay. Now that ceasing of hostilities did not change the situation to a state of peace. It continued to be a state of war, and Japan was then occupied through a military government where General MacArthur was the military governor administering Japanese law from 1945 to 1952. In 1951, there was a treaty of peace that was signed in San Francisco, but it took effect in 1952, and that's when the occupation ended. And then Japan resumed, by its government, the administration of Japanese law. So from 1945 to 1952, you had a military government there. Now, some people think of a military government as all military. No, it's just the head. And that's called a military governor. But the infrastructure of the Japanese government was merely taken over. Okay? And those 7 years was the administration of Japanese law. What we have in Hawaii's situation, the United States did not set up a military government after they illegally overthrew the Hawaiian Kingdom government on January 17, 1893. And it has since created a problem where we come to today. You have violations of the law of occupation. So when we talk about independence, sovereignty, that is tied to the country, not to the people and not to the government, because you can overthrow a government without overthrowing the independence of the country. The independence reflects the laws that apply over that territory. So even though the Japanese government was overthrown when they signed the surrender, that didn't mean Japan's sovereignty and independence ceased to exist. So the United States did not have to give back the sovereignty to Japan. What they did was they temporarily administered the laws of the occupied state, which is Japanese sovereignty, right? Sometimes we get caught up in this sovereignty movement, like if people are chasing sovereignty and independence. That has nothing to do with the law of occupation. So back then, when occupation came to an end in 1952, it went to a state of peace. We don't have that here. We're like Korea. You have an armistice that was signed, which ended the hostilities in the Korean War, but it's still a state of war. That's why you would hear CNN reporters and others asking Donald Trump, are you going to sign a peace treaty with Kim Jong-un? That is what they're referring to. We don't have a peace treaty here. So what we have is the non-compliance to the law of occupation. Now the United States president, he's not necessarily the one to form the military government, but he is the one responsible for complying with the law of occupation in creating a military government. And that falls under Article 43 of the Hague Convention. Okay? Now that aspect of creating a military government can also be done not just by the president's direction, but actually by the state of Hawaii and the governor. And the last meeting that we had here, the town hall meeting, I had 3 meetings with Mike McCartney on that very subject. So that's where it can be fixed. But right now, what is at issue is the illegalities and the compliance. So before you can move to fix the problem, you have to begin to comply with the law. And I think what Jennifer is doing here, and I applaud her for this, she's educating people about their rights as protected persons and how she is doing certain things to address the violations of those rights. And that I applaud Jennifer for doing. And with that, let me pass it over back to Jennifer.
Thank you. Are there any other questions? Go ahead. Okay, Dr. Sai, I want you to get help on this one. His question is, he had title insurance, he completed all of his payments on the property, and now you own the property. So does that change when the Hawaiian Communities are still?
Okay, now title insurance policies are contracts. They're private contracts. They're not law. Okay, a mortgage is a private contract, but there is an aspect of law with regard you need a notary to acknowledge the mortgage in order to register it in the bureau. Okay, but it's still a private contract. Okay, now title insurance. There are 2 types of title insurance: a lender's policy, which is an amount of the coverage. It covers the amount of the money borrowed from the bank. Okay. And then you also have an owner's policy. An owner's policy is the value of the property that was appraised at that particular time you took out a policy. Okay. Now people didn't even know they had title insurance, let alone why they even go to escrow. The reason why you go to escrow is to purchase title insurance to protect the lender. Okay. That's why you go to title insurance. So what Jennifer showed, pointed out in the HUD-1 statement, the closing costs, Section 1109 are for lender's policies, and it gives you the coverage. That coverage was the amount of money you borrowed. And the lender's policy only covers the debt owed to the bank. So as you pay off the loan, the coverage of the lender's policy is reducing. So by the time you make the final payment on a 30-year loan, the insurance policy is there's no more coverage, right? So if you finish paying off your loan, then you don't have title insurance that you purchased to protect the bank because the bank received the money that was under the loan agreement, which is the promissory note. Now the owner's policy does not reduce. The owner's policy stays at the fixed amount of when you took out the policy, which is at that appraised value, right? People didn't even know they had an owner's policy because nobody even knew they had title insurance. So you would normally find your title insurance policy as an owner's policy, normally the first escrow you went to. Because if you go to escrow the first time, whether you know it or not, the title company would recommend that you buy an owner's policy. And you add it on there. So that HUD-1 statement, I saw the copy. You see, Section 1109 is the lender's policy coverage. Section 1110 was a different amount. That's the appraised value of the property. And that is fixed. So a person with an owner's policy can actually file an insurance claim with their title insurance company. And I think you could actually use Jennifer's letter to the judges that explains the defect in the title and say, I demand payout under my policy. And what that would do is it would put the title insurance company in a position to try to refute this information that you have, otherwise they're gonna pay it out. So that's how the policies work. So if you paid off your loan, there is no lender's policy to protect the bank because they already got their money. But if you paid off the loan, you may have an owner's policy that you might want to look for in your escrow papers. And if you don't have one in your second or third escrow that you went through, go to your first escrow, the first time you borrowed money, and look at that HUD-1 statement and see if there's something there under section 1110. Does that make sense? Did I answer that question, sir? No, okay. Okay. I thought I heard it the wrong way. My apologies. Okay. There are the situation with land titles in Hawaii. All titles are defective if it was transferred after January 17th, 1893 because of the notary problem. So all titles are defective, including natives, everyone. But if somebody is living on a kuleana piece of property that has been in their family since the 1880s, there's no defect in title. It's okay, right? Because it hasn't used an American law or an insurgency to transfer the property. Now, for those who had purchased property, I'm going to use an example. Joe Smith, hypothetical, bought 5 acres of Mountain View. Okay. Now, when Joe Smith bought 5 acres in Mountain View, there was what is called a bill of sale. A bill of sale is an exchange of money where an equitable interest has been entered into, right? So I paid Joe Smith, no, I'm Joe Smith. I paid Joe Ching $200,000. I now have an equitable interest in the property. Now it's up to Joe Smith to transfer legal title to me under what is called a deed, with a quick claim or warranty. And that person has to record it, but before he can record it in the Bureau of Conveyances, he needs to notarize it, get it notarized, right? Well, the problem that we're running into and what Jennifer is showing is the notaries here today under the state of Hawaii are all under American law. That's like America selling property in Baghdad using American law, not Iraqi law, right? So what you have there is a defect in title. You still have an equitable interest. So the key here is to fix the defect. Nobody's getting kicked off of property. Everybody has an equitable interest, but everybody has, or possibly have, insurance to protect them immediately as far as the monetary interest. In the meantime, as you move to comply with the law of occupation at the macro level, they have to take into consideration everyone's defect in title to fix it. Because everybody entered into it with, what's the term? Good faith. Right. So the issue here is not people losing title. It's just defects took place as a result of 1893. The only thing that has to be fixed are the notaries. And the law of occupation, the move toward compliance, is able to fix that problem. My PhD, my doctoral dissertation actually addressed how you fix the problem. Because I'm not into exacerbating the problem, and I had to show that in my dissertation. And how do you begin to right the wrong is to start to learn what these laws are and what these rights are, because they're so different than what we thought as we're living. So the key here is to fix what has been damaged. So nobody can come on your property, I can assure you, and claim that's their title. There's an equitable interest there. But something happened in the chain of title, and the title company should have picked that up. But if the title companies picked that up, they wouldn't have issued title insurance. Therefore, you wouldn't have been able to borrow the money. And as you know today, a lot of people know the state of Hawaii, since 1994, title insurance does not insure states' ownership of property. Because of a 1993 apology resolution, apologizing for the illegal overthrow, and there was a lawsuit that was filed in 1994 that said everything after 1893 is illegal as regards to the state's ownership. So title insurance companies today are not insuring state title. But you still got title insurance that may have been issued on these properties before 1994. And those policies are still in effect. So this is part of the process of learning your folks' rights as protected persons, and what does it mean to me or my family right now. As far as solutions, I would recommend watch it play out. And I think Jennifer is part of that journey to get you folks on board to watch how this process goes by learning. So just like how you folks have learned the issues of the lava and property insurance and those problems, I think Jennifer's doing the same thing here. Instead of lava, you got defective notaries. And what do you folks have as far as a contract that can assist you in this particular case? Yeah. Did I answer that question now? Okay, good. Thank you.
Right. Yeah, so Stefan's question is, what are the next steps internationally? Did I get that right? Internationally and legally.
What country are you from? Oh, did you know and I'm sure you know the Hawaiian Kingdom has a treaty with Germany. See, I hear an accent, I'm going, okay, hopefully it's from a country that we have a treaty with, the country, the Hawaiian Kingdom. Okay, so your question with regard to the Larson case and why there was so much silence, and then the Desires letter came out in 2018. That's an 18-year difference, right? And a lot of people were wondering what's going on after the Larson case. I've heard so many people talk about that. So this is what happened. Okay, so I was the lead agent representing the Hawaiian Kingdom at the Permanent Court of Arbitration in the Netherlands. Okay, now it had already been verified that the Hawaiian Kingdom exists as a state. That was the basis of the proceedings. The case could not even be heard by a tribunal unless the Hawaiian Kingdom still existed. If the United States existed and this was a 50th state, they wouldn't accept the case to even have a hearing. Okay, that's what's important to know. Well, in that case, we were the defendants, where Lance Larson's attorney was alleging that we were responsible, the acting government was responsible for allowing American laws in Hawaii in violation of the Hague and Geneva Conventions that led to Lance Larson's incarceration and unfair trial. That was the dispute that was up there. But the United States refused to participate, so Lance Larson couldn't maintain his suit against the Hawaiian government without the United States participation, answering as to how can you impose American law? What provision in international law allows that? That was the issue. Now, 3 days of hearings were held. Thursday, Friday, and a Monday. December 7th, 8th, and the 11th, 2000. On the last day of the hearing, we get a call from the Rwandan ambassador from its embassy in Brussels, Belgium. He wants to meet with the legal team, the acting government, representing the Hawaiian Kingdom in Brussels, Belgium, for an emergency meeting. So on Tuesday, after the last day of the hearing, we headed to Brussels, caught a train, and were picked up by his motorcade. And the ambassador was in a meeting with other ambassadors called the Organization of African States, later called the African Union, the counterpart to the European Union. So his assistant took us to the meeting, introduced ourselves, he introduced us, he excused himself in the meeting, and he said, please follow me. So he took us to a little cafe across the street where we found out that Rwanda had bought out the cafe for 2 hours. So it's closed. So he knocks on the door, and the manager opens it, greets the ambassador, Dr. Biozagawa, and lets us in. He lets us in, turns on the lights, pulls the shades down, locks the door, and we have coffee ready for us. So I'm sitting in front of the ambassador with my legal team behind me. He tells me that he reviewed all the records in the proceedings, the public records, in arbitration, the pleadings, the transcripts, everything. And he said it is clear Hawaii is occupied, and this cannot be tolerated. Okay, that's what he said back then. And I have this actual event in one of my larger articles. So it has been vetted. It kind of sounds fantastic, you know, like a James Bond movie. It's actually true. So then he tells me that he has been authorized from his president to the foreign minister, to him as the ambassador, to convey to the Hawaiian Kingdom government that Rwanda is prepared to report to the United Nations General Assembly, put it on the agenda, to begin compliance to the law of occupation and bring the occupation to an end. That's what he said. Now I'm sitting there in front of the ambassador going, well, we're moving from one mountain to another mountain, but everybody back home have no clue of what's going on. So I had a short meeting with my legal team, and I sat back down in front of the ambassador and I said, please convey to your president our sincere gratitude, but we cannot accept this offer at this time. Our people back home have no clue of this status. We need to begin re-education. We need to engage that. And he thanked me. I said, no, thank you. That was December of 2000. In January of 2001, that is when it was decided that I would enter the University of Hawaii Political Science Department to get my master's degree, specializing in international relations and public law, and the PhD. And that's what I ended up doing. So during that time, it was larger articles, it was publications, it was awareness, bringing it through the academic realm, not the political realm. Travels to Italy, University of Siena, University of Bologna, University of Zurich. Traveled a lot. People are learning, teaching this at the university now. People have their PhDs, not just me, in this area, in different aspects. And it has started this process of education. So when Desai's letter came out, he only restated what we have in our pleadings from the Larson case and also the larger articles regarding the Hague and Geneva Conventions. He didn't say anything new. He just restated what the law of occupation is. But now that our people are educated, and I say our people in Hawaii, not just natives, they now have the ability to understand that letter. Now, if that letter came in 2001, that thing, I guarantee you, would go over everyone's head. But now, education has really kicked up. And a part of that education is how it affected Jennifer in her specific duties as an official. And that's why there was that lull of time. You know? But nothing has stopped, I can assure you. It just got bigger and bigger. But the key here, again, is education, awareness. Because you're dealing with 125 years of brainwashing. And we have to address that. And the way you address brainwashing is called education. And it's responsible education, not joining groups, not signing papers. It's for yourself to look at how you are affected by this information and how do I fit in this. And I think Jennifer, or I know Jennifer is doing that. She's helping everyone, in her constituents especially, how to address some of these very complex issues. And I appreciate the fact that Jennifer said she's not an expert in this area because, man, she has a steep learning curve in the last month or so. But what she does have is access to experts, not just me, that she can call to and ask for advice. That's what's important. She's not calling sovereignty activists for advice. She's calling PhDs. She's contacting attorneys. I'm just talking about sovereignty activists. I didn't say you. Sovereignty activists tend to create some problems in not understanding the legal situation of what's happening here. Because these legal situations and circumstances have profound ramifications called war crimes. So for Jennifer to have reported them to the FBI, that takes it now to another level. This is serious stuff, and this is not where we come around and just, let's come to an agreement. But it is hard information, it is complex, but it is possible to learn. It just, the long journey begins with the first step. And I think that's what people are doing as far as Jennifer's constituents. And also people abroad. I've been contacted a lot regarding Jennifer and what she's doing. I'm actually having a meeting on Wednesday with a few members of the neighborhood board for Wynot. And they are elected as well. And they take an oath. Very different charter for the City and County of Honolulu than you would have for the County of Hawaii. But they are also concerned because of what Jennifer is bringing out and how they are affected in official capacity as an elected official who took an oath of office. So what's happening from Big Island here is having ramifications across the islands, including Molokai. Officials are now listening, not just private people, right? But it includes all of us. And with that, mahalo.
It's 7:10. Yeah, go ahead. Great question. So your question is, how can they organize? How can the people organize to support me and what I'm doing? First off, I just want to say thank you for coming out. This is a huge way you can support me. Thank you. This really means a lot to me to not be speaking to an empty room.
Ditto on that. Right? And I'm in her district, so came from Malta, Glenwood. I'm not saying don't politically organize. No, I'm not saying that. I'm saying organize with a common goal to learn and understand and ensure compliance, right? What I mean don't politically organize is don't form an election group to get somebody elected, because did you know if you vote, that's actually being complicit in the war crime of legislation. Yeah. Because remember, legislation is what is illegal, right? I didn't know this, but Jennifer shared with me. Do you mind if I share that? You didn't? So,
It's fact.
so to give you an idea, she shared this with me, and I just want to make sure it was okay, because it's in line with what she came to learn. That this is all illegal, because it's all American law. Okay, that's what she came to realize. She told me she didn't vote in the primary, even when she was still as a council member, because the voting becomes complicit in the legislation. It's not just those up there that are legislating, it also would include people that put them there, right? So it became awareness. And then Jennifer had decided not to run for a follow-up, another term. Yeah. Okay, I'm not trying to say anything. What I'm saying is, it gets people to think about things that you wouldn't be normally thinking about. Okay. Now there was at the Hawaii Pacific University, HPU, I gave a talk there to 2 classes, political science classes last week. And you had students there putting a student group together for civic engagement. They were encouraging people to vote because what's going on, right? And after the presentation, that one student came up to me and said, oh my God, I might be complicit in war crimes by promoting voting so they can legislate. I didn't say that to him. He came to that conclusion on his own. And then I said, yeah. Then he said, well, this is what we can do though, right? We can still maintain civic engagement, but now we talk about the treaty, the Hague and Geneva Conventions. I said, exactly. So that is happening at the collegiate level among students engaging this type of issue, right? So that's the key. So I'm not saying don't get involved. just be careful with what you're getting involved in light of the information you folks are now learning. That's really all I wanted to say. See, I'm just saying what the law is. I'm not saying what you should or shouldn't, but it's a consequence. It's a consequence, right? And it's the issue of legislating and voting. It's not people. These are procedures that need to be understood. And if anything, just be cautious. That's all I'm saying, just be cautious.
I want to follow up on that. Just for the record, some of you know me from back in the days when I was doing Rock the Votes. I wanted to get people involved, I wanted to get people engaged, and that's why I ran for office. And also that me not running for office actually didn't have anything to do with this, just for the record. Okay, go ahead.
Well, in light of what the lady said about how can you support people, so I read that the council, which obviously is set, are trying to write up laws that if another council member, so that another council member can't do working for the town. And so, in support of you, is just writing letters to them that we agree with what you're doing?
Yes, I think public pressure. Public pressure is huge, reaching out to your representatives and educating them. And the best way to do that is educate yourself. So coming to these meetings and getting educated, and so you can actually converse and have a dialogue about what the law actually says is huge. And also you can get on my mailing list, so I can keep all of you posted for certain events if we need people and things like that. Go ahead, Amber.
So, to address the elephant in the room, if we can't utilize the services of the government that we have presently, who do we go to for the kingdom government?
During occupations, the government of an occupied state is not in play. It was overthrown. So in the case of Germany invading Belgium in 1940, and Belgians fled, they formed a provisional government in exile in London. They had no effect in Belgium during the German occupation, but what they did was to ensure that the whistle is blown when Germany is not complying to the law of occupation, because it's Germany as the occupier is the one responsible. Now what we have today is 125 years of non-compliance, right? So the key is how to get this system legal, not just how to correct your defects in title, but how do you get this system legal? That's what I covered in my doctoral dissertation. And there's a way to do that, but you cannot speak out of two sides of the mouth with regard to this issue because of the legality and the consequences. So it is a complex issue, and I'm not saying it's easy to understand, but the laws of occupation actually has a way of fixing the problem, but it can only be fixed when the compliance starts to begin. We're dealing with non-compliance and fighting it, right?
Well, I think we understand that, but people are looking for leadership. They're looking for structure. Yeah. And if that's not in place,
it's in place, it's just not organized.
No, let me explain.
Okay, yeah.
The state of Hawaii governmental infrastructure, okay, is actually the Hawaiian Kingdom governmental infrastructure from 1893. A lot of people don't know that. All that was taken over in 1893 by the U.S. Marines was replacing the Queen and her cabinet. That's all. Everyone in government stayed the same, and they were forced to sign oaths of allegiance to the new regime. That's all that changed. It was a hijacking. Okay. Now that infrastructure just changed its name from 1893 from Hawaiian Kingdom to Provisional Government, 1894 Republic of Hawaii, 1900 Territory of Hawaii, 1959 State of Hawaii. The United States did not create the state of Hawaii. They only took control of an already existing system. The key is getting that system here in check so that it can begin to be a lawful government called the military government during occupation. This is not an issue about the Hawaiian Kingdom government. That doesn't apply during occupation and the law of occupation. It applies to who or what entity is in effective control of territory. Because if you're not in effective control of territory,
I'm in control of this territory. Don't surrender.
effective control.
Just let him go.
Okay, but
Just let him
that's
go.
a big deal.
You out of line. You out of line.
You out of line.
Step back.
Wait, no, wait.
I asked him, I didn't ask you.
Excuse
You out of
me.
line.
Yeah, but you,
Hold on, you guys. Holly,
I mean, he's
Gene.
saying some of us
Gene,
not
if you're
lawful.
going to be yelling over the speakers, I'm going to have to ask you to
I'm not
leave.
trying to be disrespectful, but we don't have lawful.
But you are.
Yes.
But you are.
But please, please don't yell over the speakers.
It's not just me.
This is an educational process.
That's why I'm asking.
Okay, thank you.
Stop yelling.
Okay, so back to what is called the law of occupation. Remember, Dr. Desires made reference to the Hague and Geneva Conventions. Those are the instruments of the law of occupation that he's referring to. Now, Article 43 of the Hague Convention and Article 64 of the Geneva Convention mandates the occupier to administer the laws of the occupied state. Okay? That's where it says it. That's in the treaty, right? Now, what precedes Article 43 of the Hague Convention, where you must administer the laws of the occupied state, is Article 42, that says territory is considered occupied when it is in effective control by the occupier. The reason that provision is there in Article 42 is because you cannot administer laws without being in control of the territory. Then all you have is a blowhorn. You're supposed to be able to enforce the law. There should be an enforcement mechanism for those who violate. There must be a mechanism to resolve disputes who violate. And there must be mechanisms to address those who did or get convicted or not follow a particular law. So when the law of occupation says you have to be in effective control, that is the test right there. And the test here, which is part of my research, is that the entity that is in effective control of Hawaii is the state of Hawaii. It is. If you violate something, they arrest you. They cite you. That's called effectiveness. That doesn't mean lawfulness. That's effectiveness, okay? Now, the United States federal government is not in effective control of all of Hawaii. They are only in effective control of their military bases or the federal courthouse, right? We're talking federal level. So the state of Hawaii is in effective control, but it's not a government. By definition, it's called an armed force under Article 2 of the Hague Convention. But an armed force of an occupier is capable of transforming itself into a military government to begin to administer the laws of the occupied state. That's actually stated in U.S. Army Field Manual 27-5 called military governments. So everything that I'm sharing with you is actually there procedurally. But you folks don't know what international law is, because why would we? I mean, all we know is what we know around us. But there are these provisions of international law that apply in our situation. So this is not an interpretive aspect. We're not trying to interpret something and make it be something that I want it to be. These are the rules that other countries know. So when Jennifer is speaking to Amnesty International or the International Committee of the Red Cross in the future when she's in New York, she has to be careful to use the correct terms, the correct theoretical frameworks that address these kind of issues. And that's what you start to see in her letters. It's very specific. And the audience is not necessarily all of us here. The audience is actually the international community who know this stuff already. You know, when you mention protected persons to somebody in Switzerland, they know what a protected person is. But when you mention a protected person to Auntie up the road, or uncle, what am I protected from? As opposed to a title that is on you as a civilian, a protected person. So that's the process. So down the road, there is a way to fix the problem, but this is not the stage yet. The stage here is protected persons need to know their rights, and Jennifer is doing that.
Say that again, Daniel? What is that? So what does the knowledge that we know that we are occupied have to do with federal recognition? Yes.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yes. Sorry, what? I don't believe so. International laws still apply. Yeah, international laws still apply until there's a treaty of peace. Excuse me? Yeah. Oh, he asked about federal recognition.
FedRec puts you squarely in the U.S. Department of Interior. You're not lawful in your own country.
And regardless, the United States law shouldn't be being administered here. We need to be compliant with the Geneva Conventions. It doesn't change the state of war to a state of peace by being federally recognized. Only a treaty of peace does that.
So the sovereign authority of the Hawaiian Kingdom to reappear on the scene in the next year or 2 years, how would that affect U.S. ruling without these government? The sovereign authority, based on the Hawaiian Constitution, reappears on the scene the next year, the year before. How does that affect the United States ruling over the Hawaiian Islands?
Do you understand the question?
Okay, the issue of sovereignty or rule.
Sovereign authority.
Okay, sovereign authority.
By constitutional process.
Okay, again, under the law of occupation, you have two separate countries with their own constitutional systems. And each has its own sovereign authority, right? And their own checks and balances, right? Every country has, well, not every country has a constitutional system. One example that doesn't have one is Saudi Arabia. Everybody's kind of watching what's playing out there as far as lack of checks and balance. So when you have two separate countries under international law regulates the phenomenon of one country's authority in the territory of another country. The sovereign authority is still there. It's just who is administering that sovereign authority. When you overthrow a government, you're not overthrowing you're not overthrowing the sovereign authority. You're overthrowing the entity that exercises that sovereign authority. That sovereign authority is in the country. It's why it's called an independent and sovereign state. That's the term. So the law of occupation is supposed to be compelling the occupier to administer the laws of the occupied state, and how you do that during the law of occupation is through a military government. Yeah.
The occupying state is in possession of the land. My question is, should the sovereign authority, so let's say descendant of Queen of Yokalani, returns to the scene as the sovereign authority of the Hawaiian Kingdom?
No, that wouldn't. Okay, I don't understand. So he's saying if let's say a person who is a queen of the Hawaiian Kingdom shows up, and now there's a change in the sovereign authority. Okay, now we're looking at Hawaiian constitutional law, not U.S. constitutional law. Okay.
Which doesn't exist.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And that's what the United States is supposed to be administering. Now, during the occupation, though, it is only the military government of the occupier that's supposed to be administering the laws of the occupied state. When the occupation comes to an end, like Japan in 1952, then that sovereign authority under Hawaiian constitutional law would be stepping in to take on the baton, not during the occupation. The occupation is compliance to the Hague and Geneva Conventions. That will set the stage where the occupation will ultimately come to an end. An example of that also happened with Iraq. In 2003, when Saddam Hussein's government was overthrown, okay, the United States had to establish an entity to exercise Iraqi sovereign authority. And what they established was what was called the Coalition Provisional Authority, which was a military government. But all they did was replace Saddam Hussein's top tier. Everyone in the Iraqi government stayed the same. Now, they continued to administer the laws of Iraq until they set the stage for the transition for the Iraqi provisional government, which was al-Maliki, right? He was the acting prime minister, where they accepted the transfer, and then later it became permanent. But during the occupation, which is what we're in now, it is the occupier that is responsible, not somebody claiming to be king or queen. That will come up later under Hawaiian constitutional law if that claim is actually valid. No, it cannot happen until the occupation comes to an end. Oh no, I like you actually understanding this. This is good. Good point. Good point. Okay, so the point that I brought up with al-Maliki, right? That situation with al-Maliki, that was a provisional government that was set up to begin a negotiation to get the permanent government there to ratify that treaty of peace. Because you can sign a treaty of peace that doesn't make the treaty of peace effective until it's ratified under the constitutional system of both governments and then exchanged. So there was a process by which it begins with an acting entity initiating the process to get the permanent entity in place to ratify. That's exactly what happened in Iraq. Yeah. But it happens when the occupation is coming to an end. So the law of occupation, inherent in the law of occupation, is all occupations are temporary. So when it starts to move toward compliance, the law of occupation naturally prepares for the transition. Now that transition cannot happen overnight. Because what you're going to do is you're going to take yourself from a frying pan to a boiling water, because nobody even knows what Hawaiian Kingdom law is. They don't. I hear it all the time. We have to address the misinformation for the last 125 years on education. And that's how that process works. So inherent in the laws of occupation is ending the occupation. But you don't end the occupation because you feel we need to end it now. It has to bring compliance first, otherwise there's no order. There's no means by which to transition.
So my point is that the United States President, under the law of occupation, does not supersede the authority of the Hawaiian Kingdom Constitution.
He can't. No, he cannot. They're two separate systems.
Should the vacancy to the Hawaiian Kingdom be filled next year?
No, it can't be filled until the occupation comes to an end, because there's a way.
But that cannot determine the fundamental law of the Hawaiian Kingdom.
No. Okay, and this is.
Why do we have to wait, Ken?
No.
Why do we have to wait?
Okay, again, the rules. We gotta understand what the rules are. Okay, so during occupations, okay, you don't have a legislative process. A military governor runs things. Okay, that's why, like in 1941, when the Territorial Hawaii declared martial law, all legislative bodies ceased to exist, and the military governor, General Smart, was the one controlling things. Okay. And he was governed by the rules of martial law. That same process applies at the international level, but in calling it martial law, you call it military government. That's the difference. Now, for the restoration of the Hawaiian government permanent, right? Because right now there is an acting government that was in the Permanent Court of Arbitration. That's who represented the Hawaiian Kingdom at the Larson case. I explained that. Yeah, I'm the lead agent. So that government is acting, right? So what you need to follow is something similar. What?
So let's go. Help us fill the vacancies.
Let me explain. Okay, I teach this in class. A whole semester's worth, and I'm slamming it in about 45 or 10 minutes. Let me explain. Okay, because this is complex stuff. Right. Now, under Hawaii's constitutional system, okay, Queen Lili'uokalani died without a successor to the throne. She wanted Princess Keaulani, but Keaulani died in 1899. But there was a problem with the constitutional process of ratification or approval, consent, by the nobles. Okay, it gets into some other issues. Bottom line is, Queen Liliuokalani died without an heir. Okay, that is no different than when Lat Kapuaiva died without an heir in 1873. And who replaced him was, according to the Hawaiian Constitution, the legislature has to be convened, and they elected King Lunalilo. Okay, the legislature elected Lunalilo. Then Lunalilo died the following year, 1874, without a successor, because what you're supposed to do is nominate a successor and get confirmation from the nobles. That's like Hawaii's check and balance. He didn't do that, so when he died in 1874, you had another election. And who was elected in 1874? Anybody? King Keaau. So King Keaau was elected. Now King Keaau, did you know he named the heir? And that was William Pitt Leleahoku, Kalaho'oleva, his brother.
But he ran against Queen Emma.
No, yeah, but he lost, the legislature elected King Keaau. So when King Keaau was elected, he followed the procedure of identifying a successor. And that was William Pitt Leleahoku when he was elected. Now, in 1877, William Pitt Leleahoku died. And that is when Keaau nominated his successor to be Liliuokalani, Princess Liliuokalani, who was confirmed by the nobles in 1877. So when Keaau died in 1891, Liliuokalani stepped right in, because the line of succession was already established under Hawaiian constitutional law. That process has to be done again with an election. So a person cannot claim to be queen or king without an election. But you can't have an election during an occupation. You're supposed to be administering the laws of the occupied state. But that will eventually begin to set in motion Hawaii's constitutional system to bring in a head of state. That process is part of Hawaii's constitutional system. And that's part of the history and the laws that we also need to know and understand. And that's what's happening. We're starting to ask the right questions. Is that a question for me or for Jennifer?
I have a question. Oh. Okay, so you already mentioned about Queen Emma.
Yeah.
Because Queen Emma was not elected. I mean, Keaau was from his legislature. There are people that was in office that elected him.
Yeah, he was elected by the legislature, the majority.
Exactly.
Yeah. You had some that didn't vote for Keaau, but the majority voted for Keaau.
Yeah, but most of the people voted for the people.
No. Okay, under Hawaii's constitutional law, it's the legislature that elects, not the people. But when Lunalilo was elected, Lunalilo, even though the people don't have the right to vote under Hawaii's constitution, he wanted to have the people's, their say on who should be the next king. So Lunalilo actually had an election where all the people of Hawaii actually voted, and that didn't make him king, but then they moved into the legislative session and the legislature elected Lunalilo. Yeah. But Queen Emma was actually not elected by the legislative assembly. And by the way, that situation was very tense in 1874, where there was a fighting that broke out in the legislative assembly where people were killed. They were thrown out the windows, the Hawaiian legislators. And did you know the Hawaiian government actually requested the U.S. military to land to help quell the riot. So you can see even under Hawaiian kingdom law, it can get tense and political.
But
Yeah.
by right, he would have been king.
No, he was not, Keaau was elected and Queen Emma backed down because he was elected. He was king. No, she was fighting him as far as debating. Yeah, so you had pro-Emma, pro-Keaau, but the majority of the legislative assembly, which included representatives and nobles, the majority elected Keaau, so that's why he was king. And that's how Liliuokalani became queen.
What book can we read, Keaau, to learn all this?
So everything that I just kind of shared with you of Hawaii's constitutional system, that's actually my doctoral dissertation that I put in a book form that is now the new history book at the Culinary School's Kapalama campus, and it's called Ua Mau Te Eas. and it covers Hawaii's history. There it is, that's what it looks like. And you go to Keaau Foundation, KeauFoundation.org, it's the publisher. Don't go to Amazon, because I heard people on Amazon are selling it for $250. KeauFoundation.org, it's $35, $5 shipping and handling. That is required text used at the university. In there, it explains what I just shared about the constitutional system of the Hawaiian Kingdom. I want to get this back to Jennifer, so we can, is that question to me or going to be to Jennifer?
Tell them come to the conference.
So, I just, first of all, thank you, Dr. Keaau, for being here. I understand you all came and I appreciate you staying. So, if Dr. Sai is amenable, I'd be happy to keep taking questions.
Just come to the conference.
You come to the conference.
I'm very happy we're having this conversation. It's very educational, not just for you guys, but for me. And so I'm happy to help facilitate that. As long as you don't mind. Okay.
I teach.
I know, I want to take your class.
Yeah. Well, you have my class?
No, I want to take your class.
Three of my classes are online right now, so I have a lot of flexibility. So let me take that question and then yours, sir. Yes.
The U.S. still has territories, right? Puerto Rico, Guam, and
Samoa.
how is the situation with it incorporated in
Right.
the state?
Good question.
What's happening in Puerto Rico is kind of crazy. They just passed legislation, the new government of Puerto Rico legislation. I don't know how it's
Okay, so, and that's a good question, because a lot of times they compare Hawaii with Puerto Rico and Guam. Okay, I hear that a lot. People are starting to say that. It's actually not correct. Here's the reason why. Remember when Jennifer had that slide up there about cession? A country has to cede territory to another country. What you're ceding there is territory. Okay. Now, once territory is ceded from the owner state to a receiving state, let's say the case of Spain and the United States, that cession, C-E-S-S-I-O-N, that cession or ceding of territory has to be done by a treaty. Okay? Now that treaty that ceded Puerto Rico, Guam, Philippines, and Cuba, no, Cuba was independent, sorry. Puerto Rico, Guam, and the Philippines was actually the Treaty of Paris of 1898, which ended the Spanish-American War. That was a treaty of peace. And that is when Spain transferred its former Spanish colonies, which later became American colonies. And under the American system, they viewed colonies as a territorial possession called insular possession, right? And for the case of Puerto Rico, they opted to choose Commonwealth status. But it's still a territory, not a state. But once it is in the territory, it is up to that territory under American constitutional law to choose to become a state. And that's what you're seeing right now, whether or not they want to become a state of the Union or even choose to be independent, because Puerto Rico was never independent before. And that's what is called self-determination. They can choose to be independent, they can choose to be in free association like the Federated States of Micronesia, or they can agree to be totally incorporated into the United States, maybe as the 50th state. Notice how I said that? Right. Good, I'm glad you guys following along. Now, in the case of Alaska, Alaska was ceded to the United States in 1867 from Russia. Okay? And then once ceded, then the U.S. Congress could create a law which created a civil government for the territory of Alaska. And then in the 1950s, Alaska moved to become a state of the Union. Right? So where Puerto Rico didn't choose yet, Alaska did, but it came out of cession. Okay? The same thing applied to California, New Mexico, Arizona, Texas, and I believe Oklahoma. Those territories used to be Mexican territory until the Treaty of Peace of 1848, which ended the Mexican-American War, the Treaty of Guadalupe Hidalgo. Once that happened, when the treaty was ratified, those territories north of the Rio Grande became American territory. Then the U.S. Congress could create a government for those territories. The territory of California, the territory of New Mexico. And then later, each of them decided on their own when they wanted to become a state of the Union. But it all happened within U.S. law. For Hawaii, we were an independent state in 1893 when the Hawaiian government was overthrown. So when you overthrow the government of an independent state, it's no different than overthrowing the German government after World War II, or the Japanese government after World War II, or the Iraqi government. There is no self-determination applied in those situations. What you have is the compliance to the law of occupation. That's how it works. So Hawaii is distinct from Puerto Rico, distinct from Alaska, distinct from the Virgin Islands of America. They have what is called a right to self-determination to choose what they want to be. That's what self-determination is. But you don't have self-determination during occupations because the state already exists, the sovereign authority. Oh, no rush. Okay, so that constitution that I'm referring to is called the 1864 Constitution and the amendments to the 1864 Constitution of 1874. Okay, and in the book, well, okay, it explains that constitutional evolution. Now, you folks may have heard of a constitution in Hawaii called the Bayonet Constitution of 1887. Okay, that was actually the beginning of the insurgency. And here's Hawaii's constitutional system. Okay, and again, I cover this very much in the book, so I highly recommend you folks get the book. In 1864, the Hawaiian Kingdom adopted the separation of powers doctrine fully, where the legislative, executive, and judicial branches would be independent of each other. Before 1864, under the 1852 Constitution, even 1840, the executive branch and the legislative branch were kind of blended, right? They were kind of blended. And that was the issue that was taken up in the Constitutional Convention of 1864, right? When Kapoiva came into office. Now, once you identify the separation of powers, making it separate and distinct, which is one of the articles in the Constitution itself, that means that the judiciary is limited to interpreting law in disputes. The executive branch is limited to executing the laws, and the legislative branch is independent and limited to enacting the laws. There's no crossover, and that's full separation. What happened in 1887, they were trying to get King Keaau through threat. That's why it's called a bayonet. You put it on, it's a knife on a rifle. So a bayonet constitution is kind of an oxymoron, right? Yeah, I mean, you didn't call it a knife constitution. Well, what they did was they forced the constitution upon King Keaau because of sugar. There was a sugar industry. It was called the Reciprocity Treaty. It's in the book. Now, they wanted to protect their profits, and they tried to deal with it in the legislature of 1884. They met every 2 years. Then in 1886, they couldn't address it, and that's what prompted them to just come out and do the bayonet. And they forced King Keaau to sign the Constitution. Now, the separation of powers doctrine prevents an chief executive from creating a legislative act called a Constitution. So that's why that was the beginning of the insurgency, and it's the same individuals of 1887 in 1893. The same guys, right? So when we talk about the Hawaii's constitutional system, it would be, what was the constitutional system before the insurgency began in 1887? Okay, good question. Yeah. Yes, sir.
I'm going to try to voice this correct. At the last meeting, you mentioned that somebody was trying to circumvent your process. Some United States person.
Yeah. That's the Permanent Court of Arbitration.
Yeah, what's the update?
Okay. So the question was, the last town hall meeting that we had, a question came up about the fact-finding commission of inquiry under the Permanent Court of Arbitration. And I kind of mentioned that it was being circumvented by the Secretary General. Okay, the International Fact-Finding Commission of Inquiry was formed by special agreement January 19, 2017 between the Hawaiian Kingdom and Lance Paul Larson, okay, to form a fact-finding commission of inquiry to address the issues that the Larson case was not able to address because of the United States' absence. Because fact-finding was actually recommended in the arbitration award for the parties to resort to. So they said if we stayed in arbitration, we'll be affected by what is called the indispensable third-party rule. You need the United States involved in order for Lance Larson to hold the Hawaiian government accountable, the acting government. Okay. So in that case, we actually won, right? He couldn't come after us unless the United States was participating. But the court recommended that you could go to fact-finding. The parties could go to fact-finding under the Permanent Court of Arbitration. And they actually cited the rules. Part 3 of the Hague Convention of 1907, and also the optional rules for fact-finding commissions created by the Secretary General. So we didn't pursue fact-finding back then when the arbitration award came on in 2001, because remember when I shared the story that we're at UH trying to deal with education? Our foreign policy at that time was internal. We need to address the misinformation. So in 2017, the reason why we decided to go to fact-finding was because the South China Sea case in 2016, South China Sea case, Philippines versus China, they're building military bases on the islands in the South China Sea. Okay, that arbitration was dealing with a similar issue that Lance Larson had to deal with called indispensable third party. Is a state which borders the South China Sea going to be affected, and should they be a necessary party to these proceedings, such as Vietnam? Because countries that border the South China Sea is not just Philippines and China, but also Vietnam, Indonesia, Burma, right? So they were saying maybe Vietnam has to be involved with it. So they actually had a hearing on jurisdiction regarding the indispensable third party rule, and then they ruled that that rule wouldn't be violated. And they cited 3 precedent cases. Now, when I first read that decision, and I'm like, wait a minute, 3 cases? There were only 2 when we were there. East Timor, monetary gold. Those were the 2 cases at the International Court of Justice that initiated the indispensable third-party rule. So I knew those cases. I'm like, who's the third one? As I read it, Lance Larson versus Hawaiian Kingdom is now the 3rd precedent case, along with the other 2 cases for indispensable third party. That means this tribunal just put the Larson versus Hawaiian Kingdom on the map like the Roe versus Wade at the international level. That was big, really big. Right? That is when we decided, I think it's time to actually move on the formation of the Fact-Finding Commission of Inquiry. That's what triggered it in 2016, which led to the agreement. Now, 3 commissioners were selected and they accepted it. And these were heavy hitters. Professor Chavez, he is a very well-known scholar on human rights and war crimes. Now, this commission is going to be looking at the issue of Lance Larson. Who is liable for prosecution of war crimes for putting Lance Larson through an unfair trial? Is it the judge of the district court? Is it the chain of command from the judge to the hires? Because international law and the law of occupation and war crimes also includes chain of command. Is it the sheriff that incarcerated him for the 30 days, 7-day solitary confinement? Is it the other person that collected the pillaging money? See, all this was going to be taken up by this commission of inquiry. And it was going so smooth. I mean, the appointments were like just, well, it's like, no, to me it was going too fast. This is too easy. The first hearing was going to be held January 16th on the grounds of Iolani Palace at the Kanina building. So the Kanina building, the CEO from Friends of Iolani Palace actually offered that venue for the city. So we had to deal with security. We had to deal with all these things. And then all of a sudden, out of the blue, I get an email from Professor Chavez, and he says, Dr. Sai, we just got word that the Secretary General is not acknowledging these administration, this fact-finding commission of inquiry. And I'm like, wait a minute, what do you mean he's not acknowledging? This was from the Larson Tribunal. The Secretary General is like a clerk. That's his function as a secretariat. And I'm like, no, the previous Secretary General before him was working this case. And then the Secretary General was taking this position, which is very flawed, which is easily remedied. He was saying to Chavez and to us that the reason why the Permanent Court of Arbitration is not acknowledging these proceedings is because the Hawaiian Kingdom is not a member of the United Nations. Now, here's the problem. The Permanent Court of Arbitration was actually formed in 1899. The United Nations was formed in 1945. Switzerland was a member of the Permanent Court of Arbitration and had disputes there before it joined the the UN in 2002. Right? So I'm like, where is he getting this from? So I had to do my due diligence and contact my deputy agent in the University of Siena, Professor Federico Lenzerini, and we looked into it. We found it. This is where we have the nexus tied from the United States to this Secretary General. So what happened was, 2 years ago, Palestine wanted to ratify the treaty that formed the Permanent Court of Arbitration in 1899. You become a member of the Permanent Court of Arbitration, you participate in the funding of the court, the maintenance, and the administration. Right now, there's 122 countries that are members of the Permanent Court of Arbitration, which includes the United States, Canada, Germany, all of them. Now, the argument was made because Palestine ratified it, but the United States was trying to block Palestine from joining the Permanent Court of Arbitration because their argument was they're not a member of the United Nations. So it went to a vote of the Administrative Council made up of all these countries that are members, and they voted for Palestine to be a member. And that was last year, right? So now you have Palestine, a member of the Permanent Court of Arbitration, who is not a member of the United Nations. That argument is nothing for us because we are a non-member state. The Permanent Court of Arbitration acknowledged that. That's how we could access the court. We didn't have to be a ratifying party to the treaty because it provides for non-contracted powers to participate. So it's a non-issue. All we have to do is just remove the debris so the water can continue. The whole proceeding is still intact, but it shows you how far they're going to obstruct because what they're addressing will be war crimes, which is precisely what Jennifer is talking about outside of the Larson case and everyone else who was affected. Now, fact-finding commissions of inquiry at the Permanent Court of Arbitration, there have only been 5 since its creation, only 5. We would be the 6th. And each of those fact-finding commissions of inquiry, they operate similar to a grand jury. That's why you don't need the United States involved. They look at the facts, probable cause, who's responsible, but it's up to another entity or another court to prosecute for the war crimes themselves. Criminal prosecution. And that's what the other 5 fact-finding commissions of inquiry were at the Permanent Court of Arbitration. Ours is going to be the 6th one. So to me, it just shows how big this is, because if it was frivolous, none of this would have actually happened, and the more they obstruct, the more it's real. Because if it was frivolous, let it go and let it fall apart. But that's what that's what the case is about, and it's still ongoing.
You're not being brought to task for doing what you did. I mean, trying to influence it.
There's many ways to skin a pig. You don't have to start off with the ankles. I'm saying you gotta. It's a different way. What comes into issue is what is called international responsibility for wrongful acts. There's a process. Yeah. So again, with me at this level, I gotta be very careful what I say, how I say it, and I gotta know how things operate. Yeah. So that's why I needed to refine my skills as a political scientist to make sure in IR, international relations, I got it. And I can tell you, I got it. I got it. Yeah. Yes, sir. Okay, I'm not going to advise anybody on anything. All I'm saying is what the law says. So the law says you must administer the laws of the occupied state. That's what the law says. That's why Jennifer is doing what she's doing. she's enacting American law. So,
I'm gonna add on this, a few things that you're right. And now instead of a picture where I might be a criminal,
no, and see, that's what that young student had at Hawaii Pacific University. He came to that realization on his own. I didn't say anything, but he clicked it. He clicked to that situation. I said, you know what? We're not here to try to create more chaos. I mean, the first thing is let's just begin to start to understand, and as people start to understand, then everybody has to make their own decisions. That's really the key. Yeah. So I'm not saying war criminals. You know, I mean, yeah, we all got our hand in the cookie jar. The problem is I didn't know it was a cookie jar. You know, just how do I get my hand out without that cover coming down? That's the part that we have to think about. And what we're doing here in these town hall meetings, what we're getting from Jennifer is new information to think, not to actually come to decisions. This is to get you to think. So I appreciate Jennifer has a lot of the paperwork that's printed. So take those letters, take a copy from sent to the judge and Queens Hospital, and start reading it, and have access to a dictionary. Google, you know, take your time and start to discuss it. But what I get from Jennifer, these town hall meetings it's building on things. It's not just talking about the same thing over and over. But I do appreciate what Jennifer did here was bring people up to date on what she covered last town hall meeting, and then move into these issues. She's gonna, I'm assuming, gonna do the same thing with the other subject. Review a bit of what we've been here and there, and then move. You know, because it's a process.
It's fluid. I have one more question. Please say no if you don't want to answer it. You may go too far for the story, but given my European background, I look at some of I look at some things differently than the average American. I mean, traditionally.
Right.
And so my question is, when I think the way I understand the end of that Hawaiian Kingdom, right, before the overthrow, the reason that the overthrow really happened was that the capital of this government were running wild, right?
The what?
The islands, I mean, free enterprises running wild. And all these people who like to project fragments, who have you, and large people who were using Hawaiian land for their own purposes. And Hawaiian people starting to constrain that, right? And make that, is that really totally wrong? So
Yeah.
the outside of you.
Yeah, so that.
Let me get to where I want to. So in the American system, there was this belief that free enterprise is the way to unconstrained enterprise. Is the way to proceed, right? In any area. Right? And in Europe, that's not the same thing. We have the French Revolution. There is more balance between, freedom, which we didn't always define as property. But we didn't always define as property. My property value, we did revert to that. Which I'm sorry, that's survival. In Europe, we're more like, let's balance that with the US that I'm just using property as an example. So to get back to the Hawaiian Kingdom, because in before the US,
No, that's a good question.
what's the philosophy that if you stop in the Hawaiian Kingdom, because they were adopting Europe, right, to some extent, they were looking at America.
No, okay.
We have a better model.
Okay, so you are hitting the nail right on the head, which are good questions. What you're talking about is political economy, okay? Because the political economy gets into the thought process of enterprise, right? Now, every country has their own form of political economy, right? Adam Smith, capitalism, the United States adopts that theory, along with Great Britain, laissez-faire, let the market regulate, right? Competition, okay. But if you look at Scandinavian countries, Norway, Sweden, after World War II, more socialism. That, like you said, it's kind of a blending where universal health care is not considered bad, but universal health care in America is considered bad because it's socialism, because it doesn't run along the lines of the understanding of America's political economy. Okay, so each country has their own. Russia has their form of communism that has evolved into a form of capitalism, but it's unique unto Russia. Same with China. The point I'm making is every independent state has their own political economy. So then the question would be, what was the political economy of the Hawaiian Kingdom before the government was overthrown? See, that's the question. Now, I just co-authored a book that's coming out where we explain when the missionaries arrived, along with the chiefs, how it developed this political economy called Elements of Political Economy called No Kekalai Aina. Okay? So it's translated from Hawaiian into English. And this is how people in the Hawaiian Kingdom operated as far as enterprise. So this is what happened. So in 1839, before the Declaration of Rights in the Hawaiian Kingdom, Kamehameha III and the chiefs in Lahaina Luna were looking at government reform, moving into a constitutional system. That first constitution is going to be 1840, preceded by a Declaration of Rights. They needed to get some advice, some knowledge from outside how to make that transition. So William Richards was tasked with teaching political science. The problem was William Richards was not a political scientist. He was a preacher. He was one of the original missionaries. So what he did was he sought out advice from the Ivy League schools. Did you know the Ivy League schools like Brown University, Harvard? Those schools are actually missionary schools. Yeah, they're really deep-seated religious Christians, right? So William Richards actually sought out advice from Brown University, and he was able to get two books. Elements of Moral Authority, I believe, and the other one is Elements of Political Science. No. Elements of Political Economy. These are two books that were published by Francis Waylands, the president of Brown University. Now, Elements of Political Economy was an alternative view of capitalism to the American form of capitalism of laissez-faire, let the market decide, Adam Smith's capitalism, right? Now, in Francis Wayland's book, it was a political theory that he was throwing out as an alternative. In academics, we call it a normative theory, not a theory that explains. The normative theory is what you ought to do, right? But it's not what you do because it's still what you ought to do. So like Karl Marx, Communist Manifesto, 1848. Karl Marx was critiquing Adam Smith's capitalism in Great Britain, the factories. He created the bourgeois, the proletariat, the revolution, all that stuff. It was a normative theory, what you ought to do, until Lenin took it into practice. Then it became from a normative theory, it now explained communism in the Soviet Union, right? Which is the basis today. This Elements of Political Economy by Francis Wayland was capitalism infused with Christian values. How was that? No, it's amazing. I read it. So what William Richards did was he took that because it fit Hawaii. And it was very familial, very family-oriented. And he translated it from English, Francis Wayland's, into the native language with the chiefs. And where they had examples of a steamboat, they would use a wa'akaulua, a double hull canoe, because it had to be what the people could relate to. And that book ended up becoming No Kekalai Aina, the Elements of Political Economy, and it was taught throughout the schools in Lahaina Luna. So in the Hawaiian Kingdom, it was actually cooperative capitalism. Cooperative capitalism. That's why in the Hawaiian Kingdom, the legislature could pass laws that would make Queen's Hospital at no cost for Native Hawaiians. You wouldn't be able to do that if it was under the same political system or economic system as the United States, because that's a form of socialism. So the Hawaiian Kingdom actually started it well before the Scandinavian countries after World War II. Hawaii is actually the first country to actually incorporate this type of a political theory. So there's a book coming out of the Mission House, and I would say maybe the next couple months, that would be some good reading for people. So publications are coming out that are providing answers to these kind of questions. Yeah. Yes.
During the kingdom days, the districts that were, the districts that we have now, were they entity then, and were they a political entity where they could kind of have control over their...
Yep, they actually call them gubernatorial districts. It's in the civil code. And that's why the state of Hawaii, all of this stuff actually draws from back then. Now, they may have adjusted it since then, but the basis of the system here is from the Kingdom era.
But the district has political, like here in Buddha, they have no real control over what happens to them. They have to go to the county or the legislature to you know, like the CDP that's been trying to get the bus system to do a certain thing for like a decade now, or a decade or more. And the mass transit agency just doesn't care, you know. But back then, the district actually had the ability to kind of break the...
Oh yeah, no, absolutely. It was actually a top-down, bottom-up kind of a system. A lot of it was based on Protestant organization of churches, where the people actually can vote to excommunicate the pastor, and not that the pastor comes under a directive, like a pope. You know, so there's a lot of structure that was very Polynesian, but augmented with government reform that brought Hawaii up to date as an independent state, because it had to do trade and commerce with all the rest of the countries. In fact, Hawaii had over 90 embassies and consulates all over the world. Now that shows you that Hawaii was engaged in not just Hawaii's political economy, but also a global economy. All of that is in Hawaiian Kingdom law, which includes court cases, administrative policies, all these things, right? Not just the statutes themselves.
Since God likes to do something to help us along, my question is, should Andrea be elected, will it be effective for us to organize and put pressure on the new governor to follow state codes? You said the governor did actually...
I would actually leave that to Jennifer to kind of figure out and inform you folks later. I think what is more important here is if I was in your shoes and I have a mortgage, I would send Jennifer's letter to my bank and I say file the insurance claim. That's what I would do. If I was in a foreclosure and I'm in court, I would now take Jennifer's letter and give it to the attorney. You two may be committing war crimes, because you could also, if Jennifer has sent out the reporting of the crimes to the FBI, you're going to make that public as well, no? You can use that letter to send to the judge that you've just been reported. So these are the kind of things that actually you folks can do to protect yourselves as protected persons, which would show that you're supporting what Jennifer is doing for you. But Jennifer is going to address the hard issues.
Yeah, thank you. So I will be posting this. What I want to do is empower everybody through education and through knowing what the rights are and what proper authorities to report them to, to report violations to. And so you can use my letters as templates and make reports yourself as a protected person to the FBI and to the International Criminal Court. And so as I get receipt from whoever I sent the letter to, so I'm sending it certified mail, so I get a notification that they received it, then I publish a press release, and then it goes on my website for everyone. That way, I do that so that the press has a chance to call who I sent the letter to, and give them a chance to comment. I'm going to take one last question, and I'm going to wrap it up. This is great. Way to hang in there, you guys. Way to hang in there. This is really complex, and I'm learning a lot as well. Go ahead. Did you still have a question? What's that? Okay. Okay, go ahead.
Well, first, I just want to say I'm learning so much, relearning deeply all that you're offering, and both nights. And for the first time tonight, I've read a couple of things said. I am personally experiencing a deep moral and political dilemma. As a citizen of the United States who really wants her country to represent the highest democratic values possible, and to consider that unless, in my view, until we have a reestablished democratic balanced government, this won't be met with the justice that we want. And therefore my dilemma is that I feel a deep obligation to vote and to invite people to vote so that And so that whole issue that's brought up about which the voter polluting with injustice creates a deep, profound moral dilemma. But I know that I'm going to continue to vote. I'm going to continue to invite young people and everyone to vote so that we will create a responsive government that may in fact then respond to the issues of injustice we're bringing up.
Well, that is entirely up to you.
Yeah.
Anyway, I'll keep you guys posted if you signed up on my newsletter for my next town hall and what new letters I'm sending and what other agents I'm putting on notice concerning the rights of protected persons. And way to hang in there.
When do you go to
Thank
New
you.
York? When do you go to New York?
It's not set yet.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well,
Great question.
if you need a ride to the airport, somebody here will give you.
Thank you, everybody.